Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. I'm your host, Sunny Vanderstar. Today's topic is Capturing Stories, the Essence of Photo Essays, and it will be presented by our fabulous NatHab expedition leader, Giulia Ciampini. Giulia, thank you so much for being here today. I cannot wait to learn more about this topic with you. Let's go ahead and dive in.
Thank you so much, Sunny. It's always a pleasure to be here, and thank you everyone for joining me today. I love these lunch hour talks, and I love talking about photography, probably more than anything. So today we're going to dive into capturing stories, the essence of photo essays, and we're really going to pay attention to the visuals here. Okay, so my name is Giulia Ciampini. My website and Instagram are here, and I am a photo instructor as well as a photographer and expedition leader. I have guided in about 30 different countries. For NatHab, I guide in Churchill. I do polar bears, belugas, and northern lights, the 3 different seasons in Churchill. And I also come today with a Bachelor of Science, a Master's of Science in Education, and a Master's of Documentary Photography and Film. So this is essentially a world that I'd love to be in and a world I'd love to share. And the thing that gave me the presentation idea for this week started over winter. In winter, you kind of snuggle up by the fire, you have coffee, and you spend a little bit more time reading and spend a little bit more time cozied up indoors. And I've been reading a lot of National Geographic, Canadian Geographic, and even books about photography essays, and really falling in love with the form of the photo essay. I think a powerful single photo is wonderful, but as you start to pull photos together, you can say so much more. You can communicate such a deeper meaning. And so this form is really fascinating. So I decided that I would do something a little bit different today, in the sense that I would talk about photo stories, but show some award-winning images that illustrate some key concepts. So a plan for today, we'll briefly talk about storytelling and the photo story. I want to hone in on the idea of visual variety and why it's so important to tell a very strong photo story, and spend a lot of time on the different shot types that exist within a photo story. I'm going to use 3 different case studies to do this, and my hope is that you have an enjoyable time discussing our shared interest in photography. It's really nice to have a community in an activity that is often very singular and isolated. I hope to share some inspirations for your own projects if you are currently doing your own photo projects, or it's something that you'd like to do in the future, and really dive in to get a deeper understanding of how the photo essay is as a form, how we can take a single image to create a body of work, and then also provide some resources if you're interested in learning more. Excuse me. So storytelling is so much a part of our humanity. It helps us create order from chaos and establish meaning when there is oftentimes it's hard to gain meaning from what our experiences are. It helps us to understand ourselves as well as others, and it can be a really powerful tool to get to know people and places that we'd never forget or don't have access to. One of the most incredible things about a story is it can really capture our interest and take us somewhere new, somewhere we've never been. And I think the travel experience and storytelling are so integrated. They're so married. They're perfect relationship with one another. And story can really help us to see the world in unexpected ways. So we'll talk a little bit about the photo essay as a form. It is quite powerful, but essentially, first off, what is a photo essay? And it is a carefully crafted and curated series of photographs which together illustrate a story. So these images are chosen very, very carefully, and all together they come to create a story. Oftentimes it can be a collection of 5 to 15 images, sometimes more, not usually less. And it tends to have this overarching theme that each image speaks to or each image contributes to. Sometimes you'd find a photo essay supported with text, whether that's an interesting title that's informative or captions on individual pictures, or a project statement that comes before or after to introduce more of the context and information so that you as a viewer understand the story more. And the whole point of a photo essay is it allows you to dive deeper, showing you new or different sides of an issue or an idea. It is so much more than just a collection of images. And you see this synergistic effect. So I'm bringing up this analogy of cake. Cake is made up of a lot of different individual ingredients, but coming together, those ingredients form something so much more than just the individual parts. They form a magnificent cake. And so in the same realm, a bunch of photographs carefully curated for a photo essay create something so much more meaningful and powerful. So if you are in the process of choosing a story or diving into your own photo essay, just go briefly on a few different tips for you. And I would always recommend to follow your own curiosities and your own passions. If you care about what you're doing, you're more likely to see it through to the end. And sometimes these projects can be challenging. So doing something you're really interested in will help you make it to the end of the project. It's a really great idea to work on projects that involve your own personal experience or where you have a special accessibility. You can get into a world where maybe no one else can get into, and so you can show that world to others. And it can be as simple as just picking out a subject you find interesting, that you want to learn more about, or that you want to say something about. And a lot of advice I see and read is go to a local event in your community and see if you can document that, or profile a person or a species that you love, or you can do a day in the life of photo story, or follow a particular social issue that is meaningful to you. So one of the things that I love about NatHab and NatHab Adventures is they're perfect fodder for a photo story. If you have gone to a NatHab adventure or you have a trip in the future for yourself, this can be a wonderful opportunity for you to take your image making, and instead of just taking individual outstanding images, you start to think of how can I tell the story of this trip, or how do I tell the story of a place or a particular species. And so these adventures can be a great starting point to then create your own photo story. And one of the things that I've been seeing recently, and people have been sharing with me, is photo stories from their trips, their NatHab adventures. So they might send me a link to a blog post that they've made that includes a beautiful descriptive story of what they did and what they've experienced on the adventure we went on, and then also these beautiful images. And I find it really amazing to receive those, because we have such a talented pool of photographers and storytellers within the community, and then to get to experience those travels and those trips through the eyes of each participant is fantastic, and everyone tells the story differently. And I think that's one of the powerful things about it. So if you do have a NatHab story that you've encountered, or photo stories that you're currently working on and you'd like to share, please do share them with me. I'd love to see them. I have as a side note, I have been collecting small individual publications of photographers who are putting their photo stories in little magazine, small publication style work. And it's really been a beautiful thing to see work published in this way. And to see small projects, small stories come to life and actually have a tangible form. So there's so many different ways that you can use your photo essays, but small publications is one of those. Blogs are another. So we'll talk a little bit about story basics. And I won't go too far into this because you can really spend a lot of time here. And there are also a lot of really incredible resources out there for how to craft the basics of a story, or like the different story structures that can exist, like the hero's journey or the different narrative arcs that might exist. But I think the crux of it, for you to know your story, you need to understand the who, what, where, why, when, and how. Those are the key things that you need to understand. So who are your characters? What is happening? Where is this taking place? When, whether time or when as in period, when is it taking place? How is this happening? And why does this matter? The so what? Asking bigger questions about your story really puts it into context and takes it from maybe a more personal story to something that sits in a greater context. So, for example, there was a beautiful story recently about how red foxes are starting to encroach on the territory of Arctic foxes in northern Canada. And so we can look at it as a, an isolated story of one species overtaking another species in an area, or we can look at that as, okay, this is another example of where global warming is having an effect on wildlife. And here's an example of this. So we have the smaller stories and then the big universal truths that we're trying to get at. I'm not going to go too much into this, but when you develop a story, you're typically working in 3 different stages. Those stages are pre-production, production, and post-production. I think of the pre-production stage as you planning your recipe. What are you doing? You're finding your story, you're researching, you might be creating a shot list or a storyboard. You're figuring it out, but you're not necessarily in the field yet shooting. So that's a lot of your behind the scenes, educating yourself so you can tell a well-developed story. Your production stage is very much you're out in the field, you're shooting, you're collecting your visuals, and you're reflecting on the process of shooting. If you had a shoot, for example, and you got some great images, you'll look at those images and you'll say, okay, I'm missing this, this, and this. Now I need to go back to shoot these components. So your production stage is very much you're collecting the ingredients and you're starting to kind of work with them. And your post-production stage is after you've done your shooting, you're starting to pull those ingredients together. You're deciding which images that you like to work with. You're editing those images. You're taking a lot of time to sequence those images so that they do tell a story and they have a particular rhythm and pacing to the storytelling. And then you're including any, supporting text that might complement the story or help your viewer understand the story in a deeper way. And so essentially the whole arc of this is you go from having an idea to something that is tangible in 3 different stages. And those tangible things can be, an exhibit, a gallery, a website, a book, a small publication, a publication in a national magazine. All of these things can result from your photo project. So I wanted to share with you a small photo project that for me is in the development stage, very early on in the development stage. I work in Churchill, as I said, as a guide for NatHab, and Churchill is this incredible location. And I was thinking, because I spend a lot of time there and I have access to that location in a pretty unique way, I would love to tell the story of Churchill. And Churchill, if you're not aware, is a small northern Canadian town in Manitoba, located on the southwest coast of Hudson Bay. It has a population of 899 people, and it neighbors a community of about, I think it was 681 polar bears in that general region. Churchill is one of the only northern communities with a very highly developed polar bear viewing industry. And it is absolutely magnificent. If you have not had the experience to see an apex predator in real life, it is one of the most remarkable experiences in the world. But then this community lives on a very delicate balance. And there's an interesting conservation program that exists in Churchill where bears that may get too close to town or maybe are getting too close to town, they might be put in a polar bear holding facility by conservation officers until the ice freezes up. And as soon as the ice freezes up, the polar bears then would go on the ice to hunt their preferred prey, ringed seal. But it's just this really interesting story. And so right now I'm in that beginning stages of that story, researching, reading papers about polar bear conservations in Churchill, meeting people, meeting the polar bear guides, meeting the polar bear guards, meeting every single person that I can meet and talk to about this, so that when eventually I go back in the fall to reshoot this project and actually get the visuals for it, I have a much more well thought through project. So this is in the beginning stages of this for me. I think one extremely important thing for any photographer to do is kind of define for themselves what constitutes success in a project. Is it, personal gain? Are you being motivated? Are you pursuing something you're curious about? Are you learning particular skills that you hope to learn and that's why you're pursuing this project? Whether that's technical skills or artistic skills. Or do you have very specific professional goals that you're pursuing and that's why you're developing this project? Another reason a lot of people do this kind of work is to give back to particular people or organizations or causes. And so that is a really nice realm, and that could be how you define your own success, or just the joy of creating art or creating a project to give you meaning. So now we'll dive into the meat and potatoes. We'll talk about visual variety and why that is so important in a photo story. So 90%, I read this recently, 90% of information is transmitted to the brain visually. And visuals are processed 60,000 times faster in the brain than text. 40% of people will respond to visual information better than plain text. And so knowing this and knowing how geared people are towards receiving information through text, you have this really powerful tool of communication through our visuals. But imagine for a moment that every morning you ate oatmeal for breakfast. One bowl would be fine, but every single morning, every single day, every single meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, this meal would get extremely, extremely boring. You'd get fed up. You'd have to have a change, or you just, you get fed up. So this is where visual variety comes in. Just like eating food at a buffet gives you excitement, you get to try many, many different things, you're engaged, you're there. Visual variety in your image making helps to engage your viewer. It helps to counter monotony. It helps to add this depth and breadth to our images, and it really helps to showcase our skill as a photographer. So there are typically, and this number varies, but 6 to 8 different types of shots that you would typically see in a photo story. I want to go through each of them and describe why they are so important and what they contribute to the greater meaning. So in general, a photo story needs to bring in a viewer with a shot that is enticing, and it needs to introduce that viewer to the places and people of the story. A photo story also provides details and directs a viewer to the emotion of the story. And the hope is that they would be maybe educated or entertained or changed because they read this story. But each of these different component parts come together to make up an entire story. And I do use a lot of analogies, but I think this one is a really good one. If you had a hockey team and you only had goaltenders, your hockey team would be pretty one-dimensional. But as your hockey team gets defensemen and forwards and coaches and referees, you have so much greater capacity. Each has its own skill and each contributes to the team in a very particular way. So this is exactly the same as each photo shot. So I'm going to use an example from National Geographic. It was shown in August 2018, and the story is called Inside the Murky World of Butterfly Catchers. This, I think, is an absolutely beautiful photo story, really, really stunning photo story. And I'll read just a passage of the accompanying text, and then we'll start to break up this image, this photo story into its images. And the photographer, this is the photographer, Evagena. I'm not going to try to pronounce her name just in case I mispronounce it, but I think she is one of the most incredible photographers. Her images are very poetic and delicate, and I think what you'll see soon is through her images, you really get a sense of who she is as a photographer. So I wanted to use her images to illustrate these points because I think they're formidable, and I really do recommend you check out her work. It's very evocative. It's documentary photography, but told in a very emotionally tangible way. And so this was a passage that I wanted to read from the whole story. Every word Jasmine speaks, every item he touches, every memory he recollects centers on butterflies. He has studied, followed, and caught them since an encounter with a foreigner when he was a small boy. Now he pays an army of small boys himself, all equipped with gossamer nets. Together they make up the lowest step in a butterfly market that ends in a private parlor and corporate boardrooms in faraway lands, where some collectors pay thousands of dollars for specimens they display under glass. So here we're introduced to this interesting, intriguing world of butterfly collection, and we'll start to dive into this story. So one of the first key shots of a photo essay is your hook shot. And the whole idea here is to make a really bold first impression on your viewer. Tends to be a very strong image that is visually impactful. It grabs the attention and sets the tone and gives you hints at the story. This hook shot really invites the viewer into the story for further investigation. It asks questions. So here is our butterfly story hook shot. This one beautiful butterfly sitting on a line. There's I'm drawn into this image for a number of reasons. The strong colors, for example, these very strong primary colors, the blue, the green, the reds, the yellows. The wonderful organization of each one of these pupa on a string. There's a delicacy into the way it's hung up. And you ask yourself, why is this here? Why is this like this? So you're drawn into this story with this hook shot. One of the next key shots in a photo essay is our environment or context shot. And this really answers the question of where is the story taking place, and kind of like a greater contextual environment, the why. Why is this happening? So our environment shot is also known as a scene setter, a context shot, or an establishing shot. I've seen it spoken in a variety of ways. It says, where is your story taking place? What does this location look and feel like? And it really gives the viewer a sense of time and place. You think of the literary equivalent to it was a dark and stormy night. We're really putting the viewer into the story and inviting them to participate. And some of the most beautiful environmental scene setter shots I've seen could be aerial, that big picture perspective from above, or a wide view where we're kind of in this more general world of the story, or even a medium shot where we're in the home of the action or a specific place. We're kind of narrowing ourselves into the story and bringing us closer to the world of our subject, or the world of this environment. So this is a beautiful scene setter of the story that we're talking about right now. You are pulled back, taken from a higher vantage point. You see this interesting cloudy, foggy forest, a hut made out of wood branches, and a person with a net going towards. There's some information given, but it's also still mysterious. You don't see a face, you don't see a character just yet. You just get this sense of this environment and this sense of this place, which is really quite strong. One of the next key shots to a photo essay is your characters. And this really provides the viewer someone to care about and someone to journey through the story with. So who is involved in this story and what are they like? And all photo stories typically are built around characters. And those characters can be people and they can be animals. They could be a variety of different things, but you're usually building stories around characters because characters become a vehicle for these stories. When we look for characters, we look for interesting people, but when we look for character shots, you're looking for details in gesture or setting or clothing or something more about this person that we can see from those visuals. And again, variety is wonderful. So getting candid shots versus pose shots, getting wide shots or medium shots or tight shots, or getting those environmental portraits all help us later near the end of our project when we're putting together our story. So here are two really beautiful portraits that are part of this story. So this shot I think is absolutely stunning. You have a very at peace, restful man covered in sweat, so you know it's somewhere hot or he's just worked. This bright red net in a repetitious pattern of green leaves, those complementary colors. A little bit of light on this man's face. It looks like she caught him in a really delicate, serene moment. And right now we're introduced to one of our first characters, this man who catches the butterflies. This is a secondary character we're introduced to on the story, and it's a collection of the butterflies and a person who is now sorting and selling their specimens in Bali. And it's really interesting, vibrant colors, interesting patterns, repetitive patterns, and that funny juxtaposition of no longer alive butterflies against no longer alive flowers. You know, both are, I guess, replications of what they were in a different existence. So we have our hook, our environment, our characters, and now we're looking for our actions or emotional shots. These make the viewers feel like they are there in the shot, experiencing this all. So your action shots, when you're in the field, you're looking for your subjects doing your actions that are relevant to your story, and it will really help to pull your viewer into that story. So looking for conflict, looking for tension, interesting images where people are interacting with each other. So maybe a man interacting with the butterflies. And again, looking for those subtle but very telling gestures. And the feelings created by these action shots can be immersion, movement, dynamic feelings. It's no longer this stagnant story. We're really engaged now. And the emotional images that we might find will drive that connection and will give that deeper human connection to our stories. So here are some examples of action shots shown in this story. So in the story, the people who trap the butterflies are often paying children to go out and search for butterflies, but specifically very endangered butterflies or rare butterflies, and the children will work from morning until mid-afternoon when the insects are most active, and they are given pennies to do this. And again, this vibrant red movement of the net in this scene, we don't see the character's face, but we understand kind of what's happening based on the other context. You'll see that the captions, I included those because they give a lot of information to our photo story. The photo story tells us a lot, but then the captions give us more. Here's another really great action shot in the story. This butterfly dealer is using light to attract butterflies, and the photographer so beautifully captured the process of capturing these butterflies, but backlit in such an artistic way. And another example of an action shot is at the other end of this whole story, there are people who sell these butterflies to for a great deal of money. And this is on the other end, well removed from the jungles that those butterflies caught at. Here is the end. So it's estimated the trade range as high as hundreds of $millions a year. So the next really key type of shot is our details, and these add emotions and understanding and information, and also help to kind of communicate the photographer's style. So much like spicing our soup, these add flavors to our stories. They reveal things to the viewer that would easily be missed in those big wide shots. And they help also to give transitions from one point of our story to the next point of our story. Detail shot can really take us deeper into our sense of time, deeper into our sense of place, or tell us more about our character, helping to anchor our story in a particular place or time or with a person. And they provide more information, more intimacy, and more specificity. So details can be extremely, extremely powerful. Like this example of almost like a pie tray, what are they called? The trays that you would cook on, the cookie sheets, and a world of chrysalids in their final stages just before they emerge as adults. And so how interestingly they're put on this tray and how maybe delicate this process is. And here's another example of, our key players performing an action, but then the supporting shot that shows how carefully this woman is placing each individual butterfly into handmade wrapped papers. So this is a great example of how the two shots complement one another and give us a more holistic story. And on the other side of the story, where are these butterflies being displayed? How are they being displayed? Here's an example of a collector in a taxidermy shop. So our final key shot in our photo story series is our closing shot. And this is the one that you leave viewers with to inspire reflection or to inspire action. It's a shot that says the end. It's very carefully selected, just like that first shot and that last shot. They're the only shots in the whole photo story where they have a distinct place, and they're very, very, very carefully chosen. So they could be typically an emotional shot or a shot that evokes a mood or maybe presents a solution or kind of that takeaway at the end. So this was this story's takeaway. This was in the area, there's an ecotourism area known for its butterflies where they are also being captured. And this entrance was a symbol of local pride, but you can see it's degrading. And it's interesting to see this image. And if you read the whole story, and I hope that you do, because I think by reading the story, you'll get a much deeper appreciation for these images. But you see how butterflies were captured many years ago, and how they're being captured now, and how that's changed over time, and how it might not be as sustaining as it once was in the ways that it's being done now. So there are many different threats to these butterflies now, and this shot, you know, you feel a sense of pride, but then you also feel that sense of this can't last forever, and humans are destroying their environment, and we kind of see that duality in this image. So here's this beautiful example of a photo essay. This is 12 different shots, a few of each different type of shots, and you can see how visually dynamic it is. It's no one shot looks like the next, but they all contribute part of the story. And one thing that's absolutely stunning is the fact that you could tell these are all taken by the same photographer. There's a delicacy in the way that she looks at the world around her, in the way that she tells stories. You can see stylistically they're all hers, but each individual shot contributes something unique. So now we're going to head to bigpicturecompetition.org, and it's this natural world photography competition. And this photography competition has a category called the photo stories. And in the 2024, they're doing a photo stories for unusual perspectives, where photographers are asked to create a 6 to 8 image submission with captions, showing an unusual perspective to bring new insights into our life on this ever-changing planet. And the winners for 2 previous stories, I think, really demonstrate these photo story types. So the winner of 2023 was a photographer named Killy Ewan, and he did a story called People of the Whale, where he went to the north to document a whaling crew in the Arctic Ocean, and this traditional practice of hunting whales and feeding communities with those whales. And these were the images that were provided on the website, the competition website. But if you go to his website, you can see the greater story. So I'm going to show you maybe 5 of the images that he created for this story. And then on his website, you see 20 different images that tell this story. But here you see, you know, a scene setter. You are placed in this traditional whaling vessel. You see some indication of tools that are here, and you see the environment. We're right away taken into the scene, and we ourselves as the viewer are there. Okay, he could have shot this from outside this boat. He could have shot this in so many different ways, but by shooting it in this way, we are put into the scene. Here is a shot of one of the characters, and he sits beside this boat, and what he's doing in the scene, we learn from the caption, is he's waiting until a bowhead whale swims across the ice, or like in the water near to him, and then he and other villagers will then move the boat into the water quietly. And so this is process of hunting. And in this image, we see another individual in the community. We see some of the tools he's using, but right now the action that he's doing is he's holding the paddle in his hand, and he's listening for the vibrations in the water to know when the different animals are moving past, and the different vibrations will tell him different information. And so here we have this, you know, quiet action image. We're coming into this hunting process. We're seeing what's happening. I should warn you, there is maybe 1 or 2 shots that are more graphic, but if you go to the website, there would be more of those. So just be forewarned. This is the next shot that kind of is maybe a key shot in this whole story. You have the entire community coming to pull the whale out onto the ice and to then harvest this whale for sustenance. Food is typically quite hard to come by and very expensive in the north. And so this sustenance living is very much a part of the community and part of the culture and a long history of culture. And so you see in this image, the photographer took a step back and gave you this wider perspective of this shot, this action shot where you see the entire community really in this tug and war battle between nature and people. And it's a really telling image. And then another example of how tightly tied the community is together in this wonderful action shot of this woman being propelled up into the air by a net that she will then be caught on by the entire community. And I read that they would go up to 40 feet in the air, and there's so much trust involved in this. And so we see different parts of the different images within these series tell us more and give us more and more layers to the individual until the story. So I do recommend that you check out the story. I think it is a really well done photo story, but I also think if you're looking at award-winning photo stories, you know you have juries of photographers who are incredible at their crafts, masters at their crafts, looking at these images and really breaking them down. And so this was one of the more recent winners. And then going back a year and a half with Peter Mathers, he told us a story about ice bears. And ice bears are a very particular type of grizzly bears that go fishing in a small, near a small First Nations village in the Yukon. And they have this behavior of delaying hibernation in order to catch late spawning salmon. And so oftentimes you'll see them fishing in sub-zero temperatures when the creek freezes, and you see these magnificent details of a frozen bear in these waters. And I just did a workshop with Peter, and Peter is a phenomenal photographer. One thing he does extremely well is he looks for very unique shots or unique perspectives and angles and uses GoPros or camera traps or different tools in order to put his camera and thus the viewer in really unique positions. So I think this does another great job at demonstrating the different types of shots in a photo story. So these are Peter's images now, and here you see this fishing community and the stream that they'll fish salmon from. And so right away we have this environmental shot. It's atmospheric. We get a sense of the temperature, the cold, the isolation, the sense of the place. And Peter now takes us for an aerial overview shot of the main species in question, one of our characters. But we get this like a more of a broader perspective of this shot, and you can see how much one wonderful detail is how much different patterns of footsteps exist on the land and how big the grizzly's footsteps exist by comparison. So now we're introduced to an environmental portrait of our ice bear, our grizzly who hunts in this salmon stream. Beautiful contextual shot, kind of places us with our character in their environment. And now Peter comes to show us a really interesting half underwater, half over water action, like pre-action shot. There's tension in this shot. It's the moment before something's going to happen, so you anticipate that something. And then comes the actual action shot. You can feel the movement of the fish being caught by that little bit of a gentle, slower shutter speed and the spraying water. And then Peter again brings us a little bit closer. So we see the icicles on the bear's fur and his huge claws. And we see even closer. And he's done this one by a camera trap. But this idea that each different photo will contribute something more to the story. And as we start to close out the story, we're seeing the bear hunting at night when the salmon can no longer see the bears, and so it gives them a competitive advantage. And a final closing shot, a really powerful ender. We see this grizzly bear with the northern lights in the background. Really pulls it together. Interesting to see the Pepsi garbage there as well, but you get a sense of the character in its environment really late in the season. So to sum up everything from today, a photo story can be such a powerful way to take your images from a single shot to a much deeper and greater story about something. Careful image selection, care, and emotion will help you create that compelling narrative. And you're really aiming for a depth and a breadth to create that synergy. I find the best stories appeal to your heart, your eyes, and your brain. They kind of capture all those aspects. And I wanted to end with some quotes from a writer who I had the privilege of working with recently, and his name is Don George. And he wrote a few articles. He writes many articles, but he wrote a few articles particular to the art and craft of travel storytelling for National Geographic. And these were quotes that I pulled because I thought they were really compelling. And I think though he's speaking of writing, this is very much the same as the act of photographic storytelling. To write deeply, you must live deeply. Your primary mission as a storyteller is to see keenly, taste keenly, hear keenly, smell keenly, feel keenly. Your job is to connect with the places and people you write about, and then if you write about them well, you will connect your reader to those places and those people too. And strive to give your experience a larger context. Ask yourself what this is all about and what is the meaning here. So I recommend that you check out his writing. He's a brilliant, really humble, lovely writer. And so with that, I'm going to end my presentation today and open it up to any questions. But I'm going to leave this reference to work here. These were some photographers we looked at today, writers, and some big thinkers in this realm. I will also recommend the last bit, Conservation Visual Storytelling Academy. Jamie Heidenbuch was the first photographer who really broke down the different shots of a photo essay in such a beautiful way. It was the first time that it started to make a lot of sense to me, and I credit her for that. And she has this gorgeous program where she talks much more about conservation photo storytelling and how to create a project from start to finish, and really goes into the nitty-gritty. It's quite an in-depth course, but it is quite a wonderful one. And yeah, thank you.
Giulia, thank you so much. We have a great list of questions, but I just want to remind everybody that they can submit their questions via the questions field in the control panel. So the first question we have is, how can our viewers get access to the photo blogs that you mentioned earlier? Are those the ones that you referenced here, or are there other places that our viewers can look for these photo blogs?
Absolutely. So the blogs that I was referencing in particular were particular guests' blogs. So they were sent to me after a program or after that. I don't know if they've shared them more publicly, but that would be something I would love to share in this kind of format. If someone sends me a wonderful NatHab trip and they've taken the time to work through photos, it would be so nice to share, you know, the experience of other guests in this program. So maybe they would come on another webinar.
I think that's a future idea. I love it.
Great idea, yeah.
Let's see here. Um, the image of the chrysalis collection, do you know if they were allowed to develop, or are they killed at this stage in order to sell the dead chrysalis?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think they were killed at an early stage, and I think they were killed just after development. You'll have to read the article because there's a few times they allude to that in the process. And I will say it's a really beautiful written article. And as you read it, you see how well the photographs complement the story. So I would suggest reading it, and you can find the link. I can circle you back to the link there.
Okay, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm. See where I put it. Here it is. So it was called Inside the Murky World of Butterfly Catchers, and it's on National Geographic, and the writer and photographer and the link are here.
Excellent, thank you. How much are drones becoming a necessary part of a nature photographer's toolkit?
Yeah, that's a really great question. You are seeing more and more establishing shots as drone shots, more of those environmental contextual shots as drone shots. I do think they provide a really wonderful big picture perspective, and it is becoming more common. I won't say it's a necessary part of it, but it is. You're seeing it more and more frequently. But the interesting thing about that is, as you see it more frequently, it's losing a little bit of its specialness. Before 20 years ago, a photographer would have to go up on a helicopter to get that aerial perspective. Now we see so much of it doesn't quite have that same measure of specialness it once had.
Would it be possible to display the slide with the 3 percentages on the importance of visuals again?
Absolutely. I think it's, there we go.
Very cool. One of our viewers is interested in making a photo slideshow of their travels for family and friends. Could you share a slideshow app or any sort of app that might be useful for someone who's just starting out?
Oh yeah, I would use PowerPoint or Pages. I think if you're on a Mac, it would be Pages. If you're on a PC, it would be PowerPoint. But it can be such an easy way. And the wonderful thing about either of those two is I believe you can export as a PDF, which makes it easier to send as an email or send in a variety of ways if you're not the person to show the images. But the easiest way, if you open a new document and every photo gets its own page or a few photos per page, that would be my recommendations. PowerPoint or Pages.
Okay. Is there any deep difference in thinking when you are taking pictures for a longer story or when you know it will be a short photo essay?
Oh, what a good question. I absolutely think so. I think when you're working on a longer story, you have so much more time to reflect and have your research inform your images, which inform your research, which inform your images. You're really diving deeper into the story, I think. When you have a shorter time, you're obviously constrained by that limitation. And so I think the shorter time becomes this, how do I best tell the story given these limitations? And the longer time becomes, how can I best tell this story? And I have a little bit more time to develop to that like higher potential.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, that is the last question we have time for today. So I will hand it back to you for closing comments.
I just wanted to thank you all for coming and spending some time with me today. I hope you enjoyed these photographers' works, and I hope it gives you an idea of maybe some of the shots that you can look out for your own photo stories or for your own travel adventures, thinking about, where you are, the characters you're shooting, the details that are important to that character, looking for action, and how to tie those big stories together in those opening and closing shots. So I wish you just wonderful shooting and amazing adventures. And if you have any great photo projects that you're currently developing yourself, send them my way. I would love to see them. Thank you.
Giulia, thank you again. That was fabulous. We always enjoy when you share your knowledge and passion for photography with us. And there are lots of comments that I will send you from our viewers who really appreciated today. I also want to thank everybody who tuned in and who submitted such thoughtful, thought-provoking questions. Please join us again tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, we'll conclude the webinar. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.